After 7 years of marriage, Jacob finally requested a divorce because of the mistress he was supporting outside the marriage. He explained, "Sophie, she's unlike any other girl. She's been honest in following me." I silently nodded, trying hard to contain the flood of emotions inside me, worried they might become visible. Only God knows how close I came to collapsing. If he hadn't initiated the divorce soon, I feared I wouldn't be able to maintain my composure. The previous night, the impulsive prince had forced me into numerous compromising positions, leaving me trembling. When I received the divorce papers from Jacob, my whole body shook. "Sophie, I'm sorry," Jacob said, noticing my uncontrollable trembling. "I'm sorry," Jacob repeated, acknowledging my shaking. "This young woman has been honest in her pursuit of me, and I need to formalize her status." I understood and nodded, still shaky, especially in my legs, which felt like they might give out. However, I maintained my composure, focusing intently on the divorce documents. Our marriage had spanned 7 years. We were childhood sweethearts, began dating in high school, and married right after college. At our wedding, Jacob was emotional, tearfully expressing how blessed he felt to marry me. But by our 3rd year, he had started seeing someone else. When I first found out, he panicked and pleaded for my forgiveness, which I granted. This pattern repeated itself multiple times, yet he always claimed that no matter his actions outside, I would remain his wife. However, this time, he genuinely sought a divorce because of his mistress. I recognized the girl. She was just about 20, exceptionally innocent. She often called Jacob late at night, crying each time, which deeply hurt him. To comfort her, Jacob began spending more time away from home. Today, his sudden return startled me. What if I bumped into him? It would be so awkward. I had started seeing someone else a year ago, unbeknownst to Jacob. It wasn't intentional. He had neglected me for so long, and perhaps deep down, he didn't believe I would betray him. I overheard him talking on the phone with a friend. "Sophie? She can't live without me. No matter what I do outside, she'll still wait for me at home." At that moment, I began to introspect. Why could he? Why couldn't I? Why could he nonchalantly say that it's normal for men to stray, but I couldn't? After much pain and reflection, I courageously broke free from the confines of our marriage. The first person I was unfaithful with was Alex, the prince from the Alex family. That night, while he was engaged in a fight at a bar, I watched the scene unfold. As a bystander, I casually commented, "Young people really have a lot of energy." This prompted him to catch me and say, "Auntie, I have even more energy in bed. Want to give it a try?" I looked at his attractive face, marked with scars yet still appealing, his well-defined chest muscles, and his perfectly rounded, firm backside. I took a bold chance that night. However, once I engaged with him, I couldn't break free. Alex's clinginess matched that of Jacob's mistress. Initially, he only wanted me for intimacy, but gradually, he sought more. He insisted I acknowledge our relationship officially. Just last night, the prince suddenly entered my house in the middle of the night, demanding I make it official. I refused, and he kept me awake all night. If he hadn't had to leave for a business trip that morning, he might have encountered Jacob. Jacob's phone kept ringing. His mistress couldn't contain herself and called multiple times. The calls were loud enough for me to hear. On the other end, she was crying and complaining. "Why is the divorce taking so long? Is it because the other party doesn't agree? You promised me, even if you leave empty-handed, you'd divorce her. Are you lying to me?" When I heard "leave empty-handed," my eyes sparkled. Jacob whispered to her, "Soon, just wait at home for me. I'll buy you those little duck necks you like later. 1 hour, at most 1 hour, you must come back." Jacob then hung up the phone. "Sophie, if everything is fine, just sign," Jacob urged me. Honestly, the divorce agreement was mostly acceptable. Jacob offered me half of his assets, showing he was sincere. I could accept that. However, considering my current situation and the years of humiliation I had endured, I couldn't let this opportunity slip. If I allowed a scoundrel to take advantage of me, I'd be cursed for 8 lifetimes. So, I pretended to be distressed and said, "Jacob, back when Jacob Group was on the verge of bankruptcy due to mismanagement, I accompanied you to social events, drinking until I bled to secure sponsorship and funding. Sophie, that's all in the past. If the feelings are gone, they're gone. You can keep my body, but you can't keep my heart. Why bother? Jacob advised. I responded, I believe I should have a share in Jacob Group. Stating it directly, Jacob was taken aback. He probably didn't expect me to ask for shares instead of cash. I want 50% of the original shares of Jacob Group, not cash equivalent. What do you want shares for? Jacob asked in surprise. To maintain a connection? I replied casually. Jacob hesitated. To him, the shares were inherently more valuable. He desired complete control of the company. If he gave me 50%, he wouldn't remain the largest shareholder. Okay, Jacob agreed without hesitation. He probably thought that even if I had shares, I wouldn't actively participate in the company's decisions. I want the cash equivalent too. I continued my demands. Sophie, don't get too greedy. Jacob clearly didn't want to. It's all I have left. I looked at Jacob and said, and you, with your great love. Jacob glanced at my bloodshot eyes and trembling body and reluctantly agreed, fine, I'll give it to you. But Sophie, don't come bothering me anymore. Jacob quickly had his lawyer draft a new divorce agreement, and I signed it without hesitation. I got into his car and headed to the Civil Affairs Bureau. As soon as I opened the passenger door, I noticed a large sign stuck on it, reserved for this princess, instructing everyone else to stay away. It was clearly not my doing. Jacob saw it too and explained, the young girl likes to make a scene. It's fine, I'll sit in the back, I responded. The ride was silent. Jacob suddenly asked, why aren't you talking? I was looking at WeChat messages from Alex. He had just landed and was flooding me with texts. Safely landed. Missed you. Do you miss me? Every second away from you is torture. When I get back, will you make it official? What does that lousy cucumber Jacob have that I don't? He's not as handsome, not as rich, not as young, and he doesn't have my stamina. The car fell silent again. Jacob couldn't help but say, don't you have anything to say to me? I replied, then I wish you and her a long-lasting relationship. I added, after the divorce, if you have any difficulties, you can come to me. After all, we were married. I'm not that unreasonable. Jacob impatiently repeated, okay. The car remained quiet. Jacob persisted, don't you have anything to say to me? I responded, then I wish you and her a long-lasting relationship. No need to pretend in front of me, Jacob said generously. No pretense here. Bitch and dog forever together. Jacob suddenly spoke kindly. Sophie, you should go out and see the world more. Your life is too narrow. Don't you realize you don't have many friends? With you like this, can you find someone else after our divorce? I softly laughed. Now that we're divorced, you don't need to worry about my affairs. I'm worried about you being alone with no one to take care of you. I've been alone all these years, haven't I? I retorted coldly. Jacob understood my sarcasm and paused. What I mean is, I have many friends. Do you want me to introduce you? Sure, I replied generously. Jacob looked a bit stunned, then said, okay, if I find someone good, I'll introduce you. After arriving at the Civil Affairs Bureau, we quickly registered for the divorce. Jacob had originally said he would drive me home, but he couldn't resist his mistress's urging and left in a hurry. I looked up at the blue sky and white clouds above me, finally understanding what it felt like to be reborn. Over 20 years of emotions truly vanished in that instant. I didn't inform Alex that I had registered for the divorce with Jacob. I couldn't explain why. Maybe it was because I never intended to formalize things with Alex. We were just casually seeing each other. I wouldn't make the same mistake again, but Jacob's mistress was clearly anxious. 5 days after we registered for the divorce, she posted on her social media declaring her ownership. When we added each other on WeChat, it was the canary who initiated it. I initially refused, but couldn't withstand her persistence. One day, I accidentally accepted her friend request. Her post read, "Growing old with Jacob, meeting one person for a lifetime." The accompanying photo showed her holding hands with Jacob, both wearing matching rings. Coincidentally, it was the day of a mutual friend's birthday, and we both attended. Jacob brought his mistress along. Before I arrived, I overheard a group laughing in the private room. When are you two having a wedding feast? Did Sophie really agree to the divorce? I remember she was madly in love with you, right? She used to revolve around you her whole life. How did you convince Sophie not to cling to you? Jacob hadn't spoken yet. I openly responded, "The property division is fair." When the group saw me enter, they felt a bit awkward. The birthday friend quickly tried to smooth things over, inviting everyone to the table. I felt relaxed. However, the mistress kept glancing at me with eyes full of provocation. Unable to hold back any longer, she stood up and said, "Sophie, Jacob suffered a lot to get a divorce from you, but I don't care about that. I just hope you won't bother Jacob anymore. Let me take the first drink." After saying that, she downed a glass of wine. I ignored her. The mistress seemed unhappy. "Sophie, you and Jacob are divorced now. Do you still have feelings for him?" "Enough," Jacob called to the canary. "These matters should be discussed privately." "No, I want her to promise in front of everyone that she won't disturb us anymore," the canary pouted. "I want you completely to myself." Her voice was soft and sweet. Jacob clearly liked this. He sighed. "Sophie, just give Olivia a promise so she can feel at ease." I glanced at Jacob. I had almost forgotten, but suddenly remembered how he once drunkenly knelt and said he would love me forever, promising to pick the stars for me if I wanted them. This scene was truly jarring. I faintly smiled. "Don't worry, I don't take out the trash." Jacob's smiling face suddenly turned cold. The canary didn't look much better either. I continued. "Let me correct you. Jacob didn't suffer heavy losses from divorcing me. Everything I got was what I deserved. Also, half of what Jacob spent on you came from me. The fact that I didn't ask you to pay it back is my mercy. You should be grateful instead of pushing your luck." "You!" The canary turned red with embarrassment for my words. Jacob, trying to defend her, said, "Sophie, even if you're upset about the divorce, there's no need to embarrass the young lady." "I'm not upset," I stated firmly, word by word. "Stop being stubborn. I know you've never been able to accept that I don't love you anymore." Suddenly, the door was pushed open. A familiar voice rang out. "Sorry, I'm late." Seeing Alex at that moment surprised me. Didn't he say this business trip would take about 10 days? It was only been a few. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn to his arrival. The host was particularly enthusiastic. "Alex, it's such an honor to have you here. Please take the main seat." As he spoke, he prepared to have Alex sit at the head of the table. Everyone else showed Alex respect too. In this circle, Alex was from a higher tier of wealthy heirs than them, so naturally they wanted to curry favor. "No need for formalities. I'll just sit here." Alex walked straight over to my side. I didn't even dare look at him directly, fearing he might do something inappropriate. Of course, the host quickly said, motioning the server to add a seat. I instinctively shifted to the side, but Alex grabbed my chair firmly. I glanced back at him, only to see a smug grin on his face. And before I knew it, his restless foot had already slid between my legs. I tensed up, squeezing my thighs together. Instead of pulling away, Alex only moved closer. "Alex, let me offer you a toast." Jacob suddenly approached. My heart raced. It felt like I was caught in some affair. Even though it had been a year, I still couldn't handle these situations with ease. But Jacob could. Luckily, we were already in the divorce cooling-off period. I gradually started to relax. Alex glanced at Jacob. "I don't drink. I apologize for my boldness." Jacob remained unfazed. "Then let Alex drink water, and I'll drink wine. I've been on a plane all day. I just want to eat something quietly right now," Alex replied, not giving Jacob any face. No matter how thick-skinned Jacob was, he couldn't hide his discomfort. Forcing a smile, Jacob said, "Sorry to disturb your meal, Alex. I'll penalize myself with a drink. Please enjoy." With that, Jacob walked away. Others who had planned to toast Alex hesitated after seeing his attitude. The host, noticing the tension, quickly tried to lighten the mood. Soon, everyone returned to drinking and the party resumed. The canary, however, couldn't hold back anymore. "Sophie, earlier I drank with you, but you still haven't given me a proper answer." I was speechless. Dealing with Alex was already exhausting enough. "Now that Alex was here, let's have him be our witness," the canary said with determination, clearly intending to get a clear resolution from me no matter what. "What kind of witness?" Alex asked, intrigued. Meanwhile, his foot beneath the table still refused to behave. I noticed Alex's expression darkening the more she spoke. The canary continued passionately. "With so many friends here today, and Alex too, I just want Sophie to make a promise that she won't bother Jacob again. After all, we've paid the price. She can't keep acting shamelessly. I almost laughed out loud. How could she say the words acting shamelessly with a straight face? Just as I was about to speak, Alex beat me to it. "If I'm not mistaken, weren't you the mistress?" Alex said coldly. The canary froze for a moment, her face turning red. "Sophie and Jacob are already divorced. I'm now Jacob's legitimate fiancé." He even raised his hand to show off his ring. Even though they had only registered for divorce and hadn't officially obtained the certificate yet. But even if they were divorced, you seduced a married man. Alex sneered. "What, you feel proud of yourself for being a mistress? The one who's not loved is the real third party." The canary retorted self-righteously. "Jacob and I are truly in love. He hasn't loved Sophie for a long time. She's the third wheel in our relationship. Did you miss out on 9 years of compulsory education?" Alex smirked. "Has no one taught you what shame is? You had the option to be a decent person, but instead, you chose to be the dog that eats shit. Not only are you disolivia-ful, but you're also shameless. She was the legitimate wife, and you're just the sneaky mistress. The worst part is, you're not even good at being a mistress." I was dumbfounded, listening from the side. Could it be that in the process you're also insulting yourself? The canary's eyes welled up with tears, and she stammered, "How could you say that to me? If you want to be a mistress, then at least have the self-awareness of one." Alex showed no mercy. If someone insults you, you listen. If someone tears you down in public, you endure it. And in the eyes of the law, you should bow your head even lower. Look at yourself now, making a scene in broad daylight, acting like a clown. Aren't you just stripping down for everyone to see? "Oh, I almost forgot. Stripping is exactly what mistresses do best," Alex said, as if directing his final words at himself. This man was so savage. He even insulted himself in the process. I stared wide-eyed in complete shock. The canary was reduced to tears after being scolded. Jacob's face turned green, but he held back his anger out of respect for Alex. Seeing that Jacob wasn't defending her, the canary cried even more pitifully. "Jacob, they're all bullying me. I don't want to live anymore. All I did was love you. What did I do wrong to deserve such humiliation?" Jacob couldn't hold back any longer. "Alex, my personal affairs are none of your concern, don't you think?" "Wasn't she the one who asked me to be a witness?" Alex replied nonchalantly. "I was just stating the facts and you're both falling apart. How can you flaunt being a mistress if you don't even have the mental fortitude for this? And besides, who said this is only your personal matter?" Alex was cut off mid-sentence. I suddenly let out a cry. Everyone turned to look at me in surprise. I bit my tongue by accident and quickly made up an excuse. Of course, to stop Alex from saying anything more. "I'll just head to the restroom." I stood up and left. I knew Alex would follow, and sure enough, he did. I had just entered the restroom and hadn't even locked the door when Alex squeezed in. In the next moment, I was pinned against the wall, unable to move. "Open your mouth. Let me see." Alex lowered his head, his warm breath brushing against my face. I could feel the intensity of his heat even through my clothes. I shook my head fiercely. "Be good. Don't make me use less civilized methods." Alex's lips were so close to mine. "What are you trying to do?" I trembled. I thought he was going to kiss me, but to my surprise, he took my hand and slid it inside his shirt, guiding it lower. Alex never forced me, but he always knew how to get me to comply. It was only this past year that I truly understood why Jacob found his happiness. Wildflowers indeed have a sweeter scent than the ones at home. "Why didn't you tell me you and Jacob had registered for divorce?" Alex's voice was hoarse as he nibbled on my ear. "Is that why you came back early? Were you planning to surprise me?" Alex's eyes lit up, completely ignoring anything I said. "Not really. I just didn't want to deal with the responsibility. Why did you stop me from speaking earlier?" Alex clearly saw through my lie. "Didn't you say mistresses should have self-respect?" I panted slightly. "Your current status isn't exactly in the light, so when are you going to make me legitimate?" Alex's voice rose suggestively, dripping with seduction. I couldn't help myself. I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. Alex, of course, couldn't handle that, immediately forgetting all about the legitimate talk. Of course, we didn't actually do anything in the restroom, but when I walked out, my lip was bitten and swollen thanks to Alex. To my surprise, I ran into Jacob in the hallway outside, who seemed to be waiting for me on purpose. Sophie, have you had enough? Jacob asked coldly. Huh, I laughed angrily. Jacob, do you even know who's causing trouble tonight? Why are you making such a big deal with a young girl? She's much younger than you. Do you really need to stoop to her level? Jacob questioned me. I don't need to, I nodded. Then go apologize to Olivia. I muttered under my breath. Why should I bother with a chicken? I haven't said a word tonight. Sophie, that's too much. Jacob's face darkened instantly. You're only making me hate you more. Does it matter whether you hate me or not? I asked, somewhat perplexed. We're divorced. Why would I care how you feel? Stop being stubborn. I know how you really feel about me. If you apologize to Olivia tonight, I'll agree to divorce but not separate households. I was stunned. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. How could Jacob say something so shameless? No wonder people say birds of a feather flock together. Jacob and Olivia really were a perfect match. Don't get too happy. I won't give Olivia anything that I won't give you. Even if I don't have feelings for you, I'll still take responsibility, Jacob said with a righteous tone. I was speechless for a long time. It was the first time I realized that after knowing Jacob for over 20 years, I didn't know him at all. Jacob, what makes you think I'd stop being your wife just to become your mistress? How much do you think I hate myself? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I have to give Olivia a proper title, so you'll have to make some sacrifices, Jacob insisted. Why would I sacrifice anything? Sophie, no one to stop. To be precise, why would I have to revolve around you, Jacob? If I can't be your wife, I should be your mistress. Are you a gold coin that I can't live without? Or are you saying all the other men in the world have died off? I was trying to handle things amicably, mostly for the sake of the assets, without wanting to make a scene with Jacob. But some people just have no sense of boundaries. Jacob was so angry that his face turned red. Sophie, you better not regret what you've said today. No regrets, I said without hesitation. I added, and don't forget, in 25 days, we're going to the civil affairs office to get the divorce certificate. I won't forget, even if it kills me. Just don't try to pull any tricks, Jacob gritted his teeth. Fine. I threw that last word over my shoulder as I walked away. After just a few steps, I saw Olivia rushing toward Jacob in a panic. The moment I saw them, I exploded. Sophie, you're alone with Jacob? What did you two do? Why is your lip busted? Did Jacob bite you? I pressed my lips together and remembered how Alex had just bitten me. I was starting to get annoyed. He did it on purpose. It's like he wanted everyone to think I had someone else on the side. Frustrated, I spat out, "A dog bit me." You're calling Jacob a dog? Olivia looked like she was about to faint from anger. Jacob quickly defended himself. It wasn't me. I never touched Sophie. She bit her own lip to frame me. After all these years, I'm completely sick of her. He then shouted at me, Sophie, you were talking all tough earlier, and now you're trying to mess with me and Olivia? Don't you think your behavior is despicable? I couldn't contain my anger anymore and was about to snap when Alex casually strolled out of the bathroom. Jacob, how can you have such a huge ego? You think you're the only dog around? Alex walked up to me, lifted my chin, and, right in front of Jacob and Olivia, bit down on my lips. At that moment, my suspended heart finally gave up. After the deep kiss, Jacob and Olivia stood there frozen like statues. Alex pulled me into his arms and said, See clearly now, I'm the one who bit her. You proud dog? I saw the disbelief in Jacob's eyes turn to anger. And then, was that acceptance? He asked. Sophie, is this true? If you're not blind, isn't it obvious? At this point, I could only admit it. Hearing me say that, Alex couldn't stop the smile creeping up on his face. If he had a tail, I bet it'd be wagging right now. Sophie, you, Jacob started to speak, but swallowed his words. It was probably too much for him to process all at once. I didn't feel the need to explain further. He's been through enough to understand. I grabbed Alex and walked away. As I was leaving, I suddenly looked back at Olivia. Olivia noticed my gaze and straightened up immediately. For a second, I felt a strange sense of guilt. We were both mistresses. But how could Olivia be so self-righteous while Alex had to be so restrained? Come to think of it, Alex really was a dignified side piece. What are you looking at me for? Olivia snapped when I didn't say anything. Being young may be something you can be proud of, but Jacob isn't, I said with a chuckle. After all, he's just something I got bored of, and now you're the one infatuated. With that, I walked out with Alex, not looking back this time. Behind me, I could hear Olivia's shrill voice. What's Sophie so arrogant about? She's just an aging woman who can't even keep her own man. What right does she have to act high and mighty? Jacob, you have to stand up for me. You can't let me suffer like this. I've been nothing but faithful to you. I don't deserve this. Faithful? How ironic. Alex and I didn't return to the birthday party. We just got in a car and left. On the ride, Alex asked cautiously, "Are you mad?" No, I knew Alex only acted to stick up for me. Besides, it's done, so there's no point in denying it. Would making it up to you with my body work? He asked, sounding pitiful. I was clearly preoccupied, my mind elsewhere. I wasn't mad at him. I was just wondering how I could avoid being responsible for him. I turned to look at his handsome face, and then my eyes traveled down to his exposed chest. When did he unbutton his shirt like that? I had the word no on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't say it. Men really slowed down my decision-making. In the end, I couldn't resist and ended up going to a hotel with him. The next day, my body aching, I came home only to find Jacob there. The man who hadn't come home in forever was now sitting in the living room. "Where were you last night?" Jacob asked, as if he had the right to demand an answer. I ignored him and headed straight for the bedroom. "Sophie, no matter what you do, you're not going to change my mind." "Don't get your hopes up," Jacob coldly reminded me. So even now, Jacob thinks I still care about him. I stopped, let out a small laugh, and asked, "So why are you here today?" Jacob, full of self-righteousness, said, "We're still married after all. I don't want to see you ruin yourself. You've lived a sheltered life, so you're easily fooled by men. Trust me, Alex is just playing with you and nothing will ever come of it." I stared straight at Jacob and said, "And yet, things are going well with you and Olivia, aren't they? Can you even compare yourself to Olivia?" Jacob said heatedly, "She's young, beautiful, and pure. But you're almost 30. You've been married, and no man wants secondhand goods, especially not Alex. The heir of his family's even 5 years younger than you. You're just setting yourself up for humiliation. So, in your mind, no man would ever want me. But you still want to divorce me and ruin my life." I scoffed. "I've told you, we can get divorced but still live together. We wouldn't be a couple, but I can take care of you for the rest of your life." "Just don't let yourself fall this low." Jacob sounded so generous. "I'll forgive you for what happened with Alex, but don't let it happen again." I was completely disgusted. "Jacob, who are you to forgive me? You've been tangled up with Olivia and countless other women like her, so what right do you have to hold me accountable? I'm secondhand goods? Then what about you? Trash, I'm a man. Can a man and a woman be the same?" Jacob fumed. "Looks like it wasn't just Olivia who slipped through the cracks of the education system. You two don't preach to me, Sophie. At the end of the day, that's just how society works. From birth, men and women aren't equal in status. So what if you've received higher education? Wasn't it just so you could marry better?" I had to admit, for a moment I was at a loss for words. Maybe it was because every word I exchanged with him felt like an insult. I began to re-examine him and myself. Was I blind back then? Or can people really change this much to become so utterly revolting? Jacob continued, "I won't say more. Sophie, when the world finally knocks some sense into you, you'll realize the wisdom in listening to your elders." With that, Jacob left. As he walked out, he threw in one last reminder. "Don't forget the date to get our divorce certificate." I took a deep breath. Jacob almost made me throw up with anger. Where on earth did he get the confidence? Did being a man make him this proud? At least, I've finally seen the truth, and soon I'll be completely done with him. The day we went to get our divorce, I arrived early at the Civil Affairs office. Jacob didn't delay either. We quickly got our divorce papers, meaning 50% of Jacob's shares and a lump sum of cash went straight into my account. Finally, I could breathe easy. It wasn't that I feared Jacob wouldn't divorce me. I was just worried he'd hesitate to give me so much, and I wasn't about to waste more time dragging things out with him. "Sophie, have you thought it through?" Jacob suddenly asked as we left the office. "What?" I was confused. "Divorce. but not separation. I let out a laugh. Jacob continued, "The condition is that you stop getting involved with other men." Jacob, where do you get the nerve to think that after treating me like this, I would shamelessly stay by your side like before? What makes you think I'd still be hung up on you? Just because you've got a rotten cucumber between your legs. Watch your mouth, Jacob was furious. Respect is mutual. Have you ever respected me? Besides, why should I speak nicely to a lowly, disgusting, filthy jerk like you? That would be punishing myself. Honestly, I felt a rush of satisfaction at that moment. After enduring so much, I could finally express my anger without holding back. Jacob stared at me in disbelief, shocked that I'd insult him so bluntly. I said, "Jacob, you once asked what good my higher education did me. Now I can finally answer you. With that education, I can filter out trash like you from my life. I can also minimize my losses when I'm hurt. And most importantly, I can help you understand that women are never just men's accessories." "You clearly haven't been knocked down by the real world yet," Jacob sneered. "Well then, see you around." I walked away confidently, not caring about the angry glare burning into my back. All I felt was a sense of freedom and exhilaration like I'd never known before, reaching its peak in that very moment. After the divorce, with half of Jacob's shares in hand, I joined his company. Getting into Jacob's family business wasn't hard. Back when his family's company faced a crisis, Jacob and I had been married for only 2 years. I'd invested everything my parents left me to save his family business. I accompanied him everywhere, seeking investors. After that crisis, the board appointed Jacob as chairman, taking over his father's position. At the same time, Jacob repaid me double the money I had invested in his company. I bowed out Olivia fully because Jacob said, "Sophie, I don't want you to work too hard. I can take care of the family, and I can take care of you." "Right. If you can count on a man, pigs can fly. Still, live and learn." When I joined the management of Jacob's family business, Jacob was naturally against it. But since he was no longer the majority shareholder, he didn't have absolute power anymore. Plus, over the past couple of years, Jacob had spent so much time on women that the board was growing increasingly dissatisfied with how he neglected the company. Now, giving up shares for a woman had shattered the shareholders' trust in him. Letting me into the company was, in a way, a lesson from the board to Jacob. And all of this was part of my plan. Even Olivia forbidding Jacob from coming to the office because of me was something I'd expected. Olivia's youth may be her advantage, but her ignorance will come at a cost. The board's growing frustration with Jacob's absence was mirrored by their growing confidence in me. 6 months passed like this. One evening, after approving the final proposal for the day, I saw someone waiting for me at the office entrance. It had been a long time since I'd seen Alex. My secretary was a bit nervous. Since Mr. Alex is the eldest son of the Alex Group and we have a partnership with his family, we didn't dare stop him. He also asked us not to disturb you. I nodded. Let him in. I knew this day would come. I couldn't just expect to send him a text saying we're breaking up, block him, and then confess everything to his parents and think that would be the end of it. Alex may be emotional, but he's not easily bullied. After all, the title of heir wasn't given to him for nothing. "Did you miss me?" Alex asked. His eyes reddened. I couldn't meet his gaze. I was afraid that if I looked into his eyes, he might strangle me on the spot. I lowered my head and replied, "If I said no, would you be angry?" "Yes," he answered honestly. "Sorry." "Am I just a tool for you to get back at your ex-husband?" I shook my head and replied seriously, more like a tool in bed. Alex stared at me. I figured he must be fuming and would storm out any second, maybe even slap me on his way out. But the next moment I heard him say, "Then why not keep using it? I'm very useful." "Oh, you're useful, all right, but I'm afraid I might get addicted." A tinge of guilt welled up inside me. I'd seen how Alex was in front of others, and he'd never looked this pitiful before. "Sophie, let's get married," Alex suddenly proposed. I was shocked. "What are you thinking? Not only have I never considered getting married again, but do you think your family would agree?" "They've already agreed." I was dumbfounded. Wait, how could Alex's family possibly accept a divorced woman like me? When I went to see his parents back then, they didn't even spare me a kind glance. "I know you've lost faith in marriage because of a scumbag, but I'm young." I'll definitely outlive you, and I can wait. Wow, thanks for outliving me. Alex looked at me with determination in his eyes. We'll get married whenever you're ready, and if you never want to, I'll stay by your side forever. Oh boy, love-struck fools are bound for misery. I was so scared that I bolted. Alex didn't chase after me, but he called out loudly from behind, "Sophie, you're the one for me in this life." When I got home, I hadn't even calmed down yet when I ran into Jacob. Seriously, was today cursed or something? Nothing seemed to go right? "Sophie, I want to talk," Jacob said, looking exhausted. "Talk about what? Can I come in?" "No." Jacob sighed and said, "I'm tired." "You're tired and you come to me? Shouldn't you ask Olivia to give you a full-body massage?" "You know what I mean," Jacob said, serious. "Yeah, of course I did." The past 6 months hadn't been smooth sailing for him and Olivia. Apparently, they never even officially got married. Olivia's possessiveness over Jacob was almost psychotic. She'd even get jealous if Jacob's secretary gave him a work report. She'd check his phone daily, terrified he'd look at another woman. If Jacob so much as liked a photo in some woman's social feed, Olivia would track her down and call her a shameless homewrecker. At first, Jacob tried to be patient and reason with her, but over time, Olivia's behavior seriously disrupted his life. And he grew fed up. His frustration only triggered Olivia's paranoia further, making her believe he didn't love her anymore. She even threatened to kill herself, and one time when Jacob came home late from a business dinner, Olivia actually cut her wrists. Although she didn't die, it scared the hell out of Jacob and alarmed her family. Her family started giving Jacob a hard time, accusing him of mistreating their pure, innocent daughter by being divorced. They told him if he didn't treat her well, they wouldn't let him off the hook. Every day, Jacob lived in fear of Olivia throwing another fit or her family causing trouble. He was practically a nervous wreck. Of course, he was tired, but wasn't this the mess he'd made for himself? Wasn't it his obsession with young, lively girls that got him into this? "Let's get remarried," Jacob said, taking a deep breath like he'd finally made up his mind. "So today was a good day for marriage, huh? I'll clean things up with Olivia. I won't let her bring any trouble into our marriage." "Jacob, you're really shameless," I interrupted him. Jacob's expression stiffened. "You must have heard the rumors that the board plans to dismiss you at tomorrow's meeting, right?" I called him out directly. Jacob didn't deny it. He just said, "That's got nothing to do with this. I really want to start over with you." You think I'd believe that? Even though we got divorced, I never married Olivia because I wanted to keep our connection. Whether you believe it or not, after the divorce, I realized that the person I truly loved was always you. I don't believe it. I was blunt. I admit that divorcing you was a mistake. I was confused. Olivia followed me as an innocent girl. And as a man, I felt I owed her an explanation. Jacob, I really didn't want to listen to your nonsense. Who isn't innocent? Wasn't my first time given to a dog? Jacob was speechless. Stop pretending. I don't believe a word you say, not even the punctuation marks. I turned to leave. Jacob grabbed my arm. Sophie, just admit I was wrong before. I've been regretting it ever since the day we divorced. Just admit I was wrong before. I've been regretting it ever since the day we divorced. I still don't understand how we ended up like this. You understand perfectly well, I said, cutting to the chase. You know exactly how low the cost of your mistakes is. You think I tolerated all the women you messed around with, so I'll tolerate getting back together after a divorce too. You believe that since my parents passed away in an accident, you're all I have left. So you gave me money, gave me shares, thinking you could take them back whenever you wanted. And Olivia really gave you a different kind of joy. You played around with the young girl, kept playing when it was fun, and tossed her aside when it wasn't. But now, you suddenly realize that both sides are slipping out of your control. You're panicking, scared, and desperate to turn things back to how they were. But Jacob, don't be so full of yourself. You're not so amazing that the whole world of women revolves around you. Jacob wanted to argue. I cut him off again. Don't go on about women's chastity. It's been 75 years since the founding of New China. Male chauvinism is just a self-righteous excuse for men to fool themselves. But you didn't end up with Alex, did you? Jacob shouted. I heard that you were the one who went to his family and cut ties with him. So that means I can't forget you? That I love you? I laughed, speechless. Isn't that the case? Isn't it possible, I said, that I knew Alex and I had no future, so I didn't want to waste both of our time? After all, I spent my best years feeding a dog. Can't I at least learn from that mistake? Jacob stared at me speechless. And I wasn't interested in him either. Just as I was about to walk away again, a familiar voice came from behind me. I knew it. You didn't cut me off so suddenly because you didn't love me. You were just afraid my family wouldn't approve. I turned to see Alex. What are you doing here? I missed you after you left, so I came to see you, Alex said honestly, staring straight at me. Didn't you miss me? Anyone could understand the suggestiveness behind the word miss. But Alex didn't wait for an answer, walking right up to me and, without a second's hesitation, kissed me. Really? You don't see the other person standing right there? Alex kissed me for a long time, then turned to Jacob and said, How much longer are you going to stand there? Don't you have any decency? If you keep watching, what happens next will be a crime. Jacob, his eyes red, gritted his teeth and left. The moment he was gone, Alex couldn't hold back any longer. I pushed away his advances. Alex, I didn't agree to get back together with you. Sophie, what I said about your family was just an excuse to reject a scumbag. These past 6 months, I've nearly gone crazy. Alex pulled my hand into his pocket. It needs you to comfort it. Clearly, you didn't listen to a word I said. But honestly, I didn't resist for long either. Who said it wasn't hard for me these past 6 months? By unanimous decision of the board, I gained absolute control of Jacob's company and, in the process, sidelined every member of the Jacob family. After the board meeting ended, Jacob came to my office. He said, Sophie, give me another chance. You're just wasting both our time. Do you know how much it hurt seeing you and Alex together last night? I don't know, and it's none of my business. I couldn't sleep all night. I looked at him. Should I give you a leave of absence so you can go home and rest? Sophie, I really regret it. I've realized who I truly love. Don't humiliate yourself, I said clearly. Jacob pursed his lips. Here's the leave form. I placed it in front of him. Fill in however long you want and hand it to HR. Jacob stared at me. He looked at me with a gaze so unfamiliar, like I once looked at him. So unfamiliar, I even wondered if he was possessed. Jacob stumbled out of my office. But even after that, Jacob kept coming back, begging for forgiveness and wanting to get back together. I couldn't take his harassment anymore, so I had the board remove him from his position in the company, leaving him with only his dividends. I also instructed security not to let him into the company building. Finally, things quieted down. Not long after, I heard Jacob had been sent to prison. The reason? He accidentally killed Olivia. Olivia couldn't accept Jacob breaking up with her. During a heated argument, Jacob lost control and grabbed the fruit knife from the coffee table, ending Olivia's life. Before his execution, Jacob requested to see me one last time. I went. The Jacob sitting in front of me no longer had the glamour he once did. He was defeated, hollow, like a walking corpse. He said, Sophie, I don't regret killing Olivia. If it weren't for her, we wouldn't have ended up like this. She deserved to die. Jacob, are you still fooling yourself? The real culprit between us has always been you. Divorce was inevitable. If you hadn't brought it up, I would have. Why? Jacob's eyes reddened as he looked at me. Sophie, didn't you love me? Weren't I always the one you loved most since childhood? Do you think it's appropriate to talk about love now? Tears welled up in Jacob's eyes as he looked at me, silent for a long time. Seemingly calmer, he asked, Sophie, when did you stop loving me? Was it after you got together with Alex? No, I answered plainly. It was the moment I lost the baby in my belly. We had a child? Jacob was shocked. When I found out about your first affair, why didn't you tell me? Why do you think... But you forgave me, didn't you? You clearly forgave me back then. Jacob couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe that was the moment I stopped loving him. If you hadn't forgiven me then, why didn't you divorce me? Because I had to weigh the costs. I wasn't going to let you walk away scot-free, I admitted. No, you're lying to me. If you had stopped loving me then, you wouldn't have waited so many years to cheat. You must be lying, right? Jacob couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept that his pride in juggling many women had ended with the collapse of his own home. I calmly told him, "Jacob, the reason I didn't bring up divorce back then is because I knew very well that even if I divorced you, I wouldn't be able to jump into another relationship right away. To me, not getting divorced wasn't delaying my life. Besides, if I had asked for a divorce at that time, would you have agreed? Back then, you were just chasing after something new, without any real feelings involved. Even if I'd kicked up a fuss and you agreed, I wouldn't have gotten the assets I wanted. With just a bit of manipulation on your part, I'd have lost out. So, during our marriage, I collected evidence of your affairs, checked up on your assets, transferred the wealth I could, and even laid the groundwork for my future. It wasn't until this year that I got everything in order. And why didn't I cheat until last year? Because I'm not like you. I don't have the nerve to be so shameless. It took me a long time to build up the mental strength to take such a disallivia-ful step. It wasn't revenge on you, just a simple physical need." I looked at Jacob, at the pain he couldn't hide. He said, "So this year, even if I hadn't brought up divorce, you would have, right?" "Yes. And when we discussed the divorce agreement, you already had a clear understanding of the asset division. So when you knew I was serious about it, you raised the stakes, didn't you?" "Yes. That day when we talked about divorce, your red eyes and trembling weren't from sadness, but from happiness." "No," I said. Jacob's eyes shifted slightly. "That was because Alex kept me up all night. Sophie, I'm about to die. Why can't you lie to me just a little? Why not?" Jacob broke down, devastated and desperate. "Because, Jacob, you're not worth it." Tears streamed down Jacob's face uncontrollably. The last time he cried like that was at our wedding. As expected, life comes full circle. I left, clean and decisive. At the prison gates, Alex was waiting for me. It was only later that I found out the reason Alex's family agreed to our relationship was because ever since he got together with me, he stopped living recklessly and devoted himself to making money to support a wife. The reason his family was once rude to me wasn't because they looked down on my background, but because they didn't think I was worth Alex's efforts. They also only agreed to let me send Alex abroad because they had their own plan in mind. They had always wanted to send Alex overseas to gain experience, but Alex stubbornly refused to go. So they took the opportunity to have Alex open up the European market. As long as he succeeded, they'd let him stay with me. Poor Alex. He was kept in the dark, blissfully unaware. I looked helplessly at the large bouquet of bright red roses in Alex's hands. This guy really didn't miss a beat, proposing to me even outside a prison. What can I say? Maybe I should give it a try. After all, when I cheated, I had the same mindset. Just give it a shot. And the experience was a 10 out of 10. What if marriage turns out the same way? Anyway, I have nothing to lose, because marriage has never been a shackle for women, and women have never been mere appendages to men. No matter what kind of life a woman wants to live, it's never too late to make a change.